Lane Kiffin dodges a direct question about leaving Ole Miss, and the Rebels fans are melting. We got to talk about this. Locked on LSU. Here we go.
You are Locked on LSU, your daily podcast on the LSU Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Okay, let's get it. It is Locked on LSU, your team every day. I'm your host, Matt Moscona. Thanks so much for making us your first listen. We're free, available wherever you get podcasts, of course, on YouTube as well. So please subscribe. And as always, one of the fastest ways to help us grow is by leaving your comments below. So thank you sincerely for that. And thank you for helping make the Locked On Podcast Network the #1 sports podcast network in the world. It was an interesting Saturday in college football where Texas A&M erased a 27-point deficit. Alabama lost to Oklahoma. LSU survived against a terrible Arkansas team. And Ole Miss, with a hornet's nest of a stadium, a fever pitch frenzy against Florida, a team that beat them a year ago and is apparently courting their head coach. Ole Miss overcame a second-half deficit and beat the Gators in Oxford. But that's not the story. The story is what happened in the post-game press conference. Because right now, we all know that Lane Kiffin is the apple of every team's eye who needs a head coach, namely Florida and LSU. And I have no problem saying that since in the 3 weeks since LSU fired Brian Kelly, that the best information I have is that Lane Kiffin is LSU's top target. Now, I don't know if I've been very consistent with this. I don't know if they will land Lane Kiffin, but I don't know what their next option will be if they don't get Lane Kiffin. But Lane Kiffin is LSU's top target. And Saturday night, after Ole Miss beat Florida, Lane Kiffin was asked a very direct question about the rumors, because not only is it LSU interest, but there is very sincere Florida interest as well, which we'll talk about here in a second. But here was Lane Kiffin on Saturday after the Ole Miss Rebels beat the Florida Gators to move to 9-1 on the season. It certainly seems like they are a shoo-in at this point for the college football playoff. Here's what Kiffin said.
There's a lot of talk about you for coaching searches right now. Do you anticipate being the head coach at Ole Miss next year?
Yeah, I think the last chapter thing makes me feel like I'm like 80 years old, you know? So I don't like being old, so I don't really like that part of the story that makes me feel like I'm on my last chapter. So I love what we're doing here. Today was awesome, and I don't talk about that stuff. And really, to even talk about it right now would be so disrespectful to our players and how well they played today. So, you know, we got a lot of things going here, doing really well, and I love it here. So
I want you to put yourself in the shoes of an Ole Miss fan, alum, booster, administrator, whomever. Imagine someone asks your coach, point blank, do you anticipate being the coach at Ole Miss next year? And what you get is a 30-second rambling, awkward, swaying side to side hand gesture thing about how it's disrespectful to the players and how well they played. And you finish it by saying, and I love it here. So how would you feel? Let me remove sports from this. Let's use this as a real life instance. Let's say that's your spouse, and someone asks your spouse point blank, hey, do you anticipate being married to your spouse? And instead of the adamant answer, which we would all anticipate, of course, where else would I go? I love my spouse. I'm married to my spouse. I'm committed to my spouse forever. Like the obvious answer that you would want to hear. Instead, what you get is the swaying, awkward, bumbling, hem-haw, this, that, I love it here, but it's disrespectful to talk about. No. If you're staying, there's an obvious answer. The obvious answer is the obvious answer that Dan Lanning told Rich Eisen when Rich Eisen said, hey, are you interested in other jobs? Remember what Dan Lanning said?
Yeah, I'm not leaving Oregon. Yeah, as long as I win. That's what I always tell my kids. Yeah. Right. If your dad wins, we'll be at Oregon. So I gotta win. Right. That's how it changes.
Point blank, I'm not leaving Oregon. There is no ambiguity. Every Oregon fan can exhale and go, good, he's with us. I'm not leaving Oregon. Lane Kiffin didn't say that. And as a result, despite the fact that he has now had many opportunities to downplay all of this attention and interest and reports, he continues to let it persist. And as I always say, actions speak louder than words. Remember, Lane Kiffin has had a contract extension on the table from Ole Miss that would make him the highest paid coach in America, reportedly $13.5 million. By the way, I'm going to tie this into LSU because not only is Kiffin wavering at Ole Miss, LSU and Florida are the two where there's interest. I'm going to get into this here in a second. I'm going to tell you what I know here in a second. But he's had this contract extension on the table, and he hasn't signed it. That tells you what you need to know. Mike Elko on Saturday agreed to a contract extension with Texas A&M. Earlier this year, Curt Cignetti signed a contract extension with Indiana. If you loved where you were and wanted to be there, operative word, wanted to be there, didn't have longing eyes for other places, you'd have signed that contract extension. The fact that Lane Kiffin has not signed that extension tells you he is longing for something else. And it is also very obvious at this point that the Ole Miss boosters and the Ole Miss community are getting restless. The Mississippi Secretary of State is a man named Michael Watson. Don't know him, never heard of him. But on Sunday morning at 7:58 a.m., he tweets, after someone said, Ole Miss will have a very good football coach in 2026, he replies, couldn't agree more. At some point, it would be nice for our current coach at Lane Kiffin. He tags Lane Kiffin in this tweet to reciprocate the love and gratitude shown by our administration, players, fan base, and collective. It shouldn't be this hard. Oh, by the way, a very prominent Ole Miss booster, Tyler Jordan, who is the VP of Realtree, big-time Ole Miss booster. He quote tweeted a tweet about the largest crowd in the history of Vaught-Hemingway Stadium. He quote tweets that with the word commitment with 3 clapping hands emojis. You can tell right now, everyone at Ole Miss is uneasy. They love Lane Kiffin. They want Lane Kiffin to stay. Lane Kiffin does not want them. And I believe Lane Kiffin very much has enjoyed his time at Ole Miss. I believe he does love it there. But I also believe that he wants to win a championship, and he doesn't think he can do it there. Let me point this out as well. That tweet I just referenced was about Ole Miss having a record-breaking crowd at Vaught-Hemingway Stadium, 68,000 people. Let me put this into perspective for you. 68,000 people, biggest crowd ever at Vaught-Hemingway Stadium. LSU, on the same day, on a 3-game losing streak with a 5-4 record against a 2-7 Arkansas team at 11:45 in the morning, had more butts in the seats than the greatest crowd ever at Ole Miss. Why is Lane Kiffin looking elsewhere? That, in a nutshell, is why Lane Kiffin is looking elsewhere. It's what I've continued to say. 2 things can be true at the same time. He can love Ole Miss. He can be grateful for his time there. He can do a lot of good things there. But he can also realize he has a lower ceiling at Ole Miss. And if his goal is to win championships, he recognizes he's not going to be able to do that at Ole Miss. And so then the question becomes, okay, if it's not at Ole Miss, then where and when? And that's what I want to get into as we continue Locked on LSU, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Wayfair. The holiday season is right around the corner, and that means it's time to get your home ready. Whether you need more seating for guests, cozy new linens, or fun serveware for holiday hosting, Wayfair's Black Friday sale is here to help you make your space shine. And the best part, you don't have to wait. Wayfair's Black Friday's deals are happening all month long with up to 70% off, from sofas to spatulas. Recently upgraded our office equipment as well. The chair I'm sitting in, the desk I'm sitting in for this football season, all got it from Wayfair. So don't miss out on early Black Friday deals. Head to wayfair.com now to shop Wayfair's Black Friday sale for up to 70% off. That's WAYFAIR.com. Sale ends December the 7th. And we're brought to you by FanDuel. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you missed the start of the game or you want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team's making that late push. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. If you put your ear to the ground around Florida and Gainesville, the assumption is that this is a done deal, that Lane Kiffin is going to be the Florida coach. I'm not going to tell you today that Kiffin won't be the Florida coach. That's not why I'm here. I'm not here to say that definitively. What I will say definitively today, and as we record this, it's Sunday, November the 16th at 3 o'clock in the afternoon as we record this. As of this moment, Lane Kiffin to Florida is far from a done deal. And Lane Kiffin to LSU is very, very, very much in play. Now, the Florida piece of it makes sense. Lane's wife, and they are legally divorced, but now they're reconciled. It's the mother of his 3 children. She lives in Oxford now. They're with them as they've reconciled. Her name is Layla, and her maiden name is Reeves. She is the daughter of John Reeves, who was a former Florida quarterback and a beloved player there. And she attended the University of Florida in the early mid-90s. So she is a Florida alum who went to school in Gainesville. Her dad played quarterback at Florida. So there's a connection there, a family connection with the Kiffins to Gainesville. And for that reason, there's this strong feeling that Lane is going to be pulled to Gainesville. And that might very well be the case. Again, I am not denying that possibility or even the likelihood of that happening. That very much could happen as Lane Kiffin goes to Florida. But if you are ignoring the LSU connections, you are missing a giant part of the story. And again, I always want to be very clear when I'm giving you information and when I'm giving you opinion. What I'm about to tell you right now is not opinion. This is information. I'm going to be very careful with what I disclose and when I disclose it. But what I will tell you is that there is mutual and sincere interest between Lane Kiffin and LSU. That is not tabloid journalism. That is not hearsay. That is real. Now, you may say, well, this is probably just Jimmy Sexton playing everybody against each other to get the biggest deal. And maybe that's the case. Lane Kiffin has said point blank, he's never going to make a decision about money, and I believe him. Because he's had a deal on the table that would make him the highest paid coach in the country from Ole Miss. And wherever he goes, if he stays at Ole Miss, if he goes to Florida, if he picks LSU, wherever he goes, I do believe he will be the highest paid coach in the country. Kirby Smart makes 13.3. Lane will exceed that. Now, you're going to say, Matt, how could LSU pay that with all the governor and saying they're going to do a different type of deal? I want to remind you that Verge Osbury, when he was named the acting athletic director, the interim athletic director on that Friday after Scott Woodward and LSU mutually agreed to part ways, the board members there, Scott Ballard, John Carmouche, said Verge has autonomy to go hire the best coach. That's what he's been to go get the best coach. When Verge was asked specifically about the contract, he said, we didn't bring that up. He said, go hire the best coach. I do believe, as it's been explained to me, that LSU would be able to do a contract for Lane Kiffin that would average $14 million per year over 6 years. That would equal about $84 million. That would be about the terms of the contract. Write this down. Remember it. If I'm wrong, you can all point the fingers and laugh at me. But that type of deal would get it done. And even if it's fully guaranteed, there's no reality where you would assume Lane Kiffin would be gone inside of 4 years. So even if he was gone after 4 years and you paid him, $28 million buyout, that's still a pittance compared to what you got to pay Brian Kelly right now. And then there could be mitigation, a lot of other things to lessen it. So, and who knows what the contract coaching market will look like 4 years from now as it continues to accelerate. So that's one thing, is the affordability. LSU could make it work. Number two is who is doing these deals. Remember, Lane Kiffin isn't taking phone calls right now from Scott Strickland at Florida or Verge Osberry at LSU. Like, they're not having long, detailed conversations yet. That will happen, but not yet. The way these things happen now are through agents and the representatives of the school. So we know Verge Osberry is leading LSU search, and he's got a 5-member committee around him. That search committee are the ones talking and conversing with Jimmy Sexton, who is representing Lane Kiffin. He is speaking on Lane Kiffin's behalf. And it is important to know that Verge Osberry and Jimmy Sexton have had a long-standing relationship since Nick Saban was here the first time back in the early 2000s, when Verge started working in the athletic department at that time, where he was very close with Scott Woodward, who was the conduit to the chancellor's office and then the university. Verge was in that capacity 25 years ago. So Verge and Jimmy Sexton have had a quarter-century relationship. Also, as we've talked so much throughout this process about Nick Saban, I have no problem telling you that LSU's representatives have spoken directly to Nick. And when I say representatives, I mean Verge Osberry, who's told us that on the record on my radio show, that they speak every 2 to 3 weeks. They're very prominent LSU boosters who are good friends with Nick Saban, who have business dealings with Nick Saban, who still speak to him regularly, who have conversed with him. And I believe Nick Saban, the information I've gotten, has recommended Lane Kiffin for the LSU job. And so if you have Nick Saban and Jimmy Sexton, both with great relationships with Verge Osberry, who's leading this search, and Kiffin, who's always had a little bit of a longing eye for Baton Rouge when you talk to people within the community, because he looks and says the thing a lot of us have said, that Les Miles and Ed Ogeron won championships in Baton Rouge. I think he loves the idea of all the talent in the state and be the only Power 5 in a talent-rich state and all the resources that you would get. And then the other component of it as well is Pete Golding. Remember, Lane Kiffin's defensive coordinator at Ole Miss is Pete Golding, he's from Hammond. His wife is from Hammond. And there is just the only way Pete Golding wouldn't come to Baton Rouge with Lane Kiffin is if he got the Ole Miss job, which I've asked that question of a lot of people around the Ole Miss program. And it seems to be that wouldn't be the case. So Pete Golding could also be putting pressure on Lane to take the LSU job. All that to say, no doubt, Lane's wife has a deep connection to Gainesville, but we also could point out the fact that his daughter is dating Whit Weeks, who's the LSU linebacker, and Landry Kiffin has been in Baton Rouge a bunch. So you can see all of these pulls and all of these ties and all of these tugs that could bring Lane Kiffin closer to Baton Rouge. I'll also remind you that Frank Wilson, LSU's recruiting coordinator, Lane Kiffin hired Frank Wilson at the University of Tennessee the year he was there in 2008 before Lane took the SC job. And then Frank came to, or 2009, and Frank came to LSU to join Les Miles' staff in 2010. There's the Austin Thomas connection as well that a lot of people have brought up, who was on Lane Kiffin's staff before he left for LSU. The point being, yes, absolutely. Lane Kiffin's wife went to Florida. Her dad played football there. That's a real thing. And for that reason, a lot of Florida people primarily think that Lane Kiffin's going to pick Florida. What I'm telling you is there's a lot of personal and professional pressures and ties steering Lane Kiffin toward Baton Rouge. LSU can absolutely make the money work to make him the richest paid coach, the highest paid coach in the country, and give him all the resources that he would want in Baton Rouge. So I'm not telling you, I want to be clear about this again so there's no mistaking what I'm saying. I'm not sitting here saying Lane Kiffin's going to be the LSU coach. What I am saying is he's LSU's number one target. I'm not saying Lane's not going to Florida. he may go to Florida. What I'm telling you today is that's not a done deal, as some people in Gainesville would have you believe it to be, because this week coming, there is going to be a lot of vetting from Kiffin and his family about what it would be like if they took the LSU job. And all the while, he's getting tremendous pressure from Ole Miss, the athletic director, boosters, the state's Secretary of State, who are all trying to get him to commit to Ole Miss, which he's not willing to do, has not been willing to do clearly, which tells you he's open to other possibilities. And if that's the case, chances are this path is going to lead him elsewhere. If you made me bet today, like if I had to bet, and this is where I'm giving you an opinion. Again, I'm going to be clear. This is an opinion. My opinion is Lane Kiffin will not be coaching Ole Miss next year. That Lane Kiffin will either be coaching LSU or Florida. And that decision has not been made. He's going to have three really good options. Stay at Ole Miss, go to Florida, go to LSU. I think any of them are going to make him the highest paid coach in college football, and he would do really well at any of the three. At this point, it's a matter of what will that decision be and when, but I'm going to reiterate this. This is something I said last week, and I know a lot of people pushed back on me against it. Ole Miss is not going to let him coach in the playoff if he's leaving. They are going to pressure him to make a decision one way or another. And if he's leaving, he's out, and he's not going to coach that playoff. And I know a lot of people say, why would you? It's your best chance to win in 6 decades and all that sort of stuff. And I get it. Put yourself in their shoes. Would you let your coach, who is leaving you to go coach another team in your conference, stay with you for another month? Would you let him stay and recruit your roster? Would you let him stay and work for another program while coaching your team? Would you let him be on the sideline while you're in the playoff game and all of the conversation is about him leaving you to go to another school? No shot. No shot. No shot. So Ole Miss is going to pressure Lane Kiffin into a decision, I would assume, by the end of the regular season here. And I would assume that by the time Thanksgiving comes and Ole Miss plays the Egg Bowl within 24, 48 hours of that game, if not sooner, we'll have an answer of what Lane Kiffin is going to do. And I believe it'll be one of those three. It'll be Ole Miss, Florida, or LSU. And don't count out the Tigers. He is their number one target. They are making a strong push for him. There are a lot of ties personally and professionally linking Kiffin to LSU, and that is very, very, very much in play. And as it continues, we'll talk about it right here on Locked on LSU. Hey, thanks so much for making us your first listen. Please subscribe on your favorite podcast app, rate us, leave a review. If you're on YouTube, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell so you're notified whenever we post a new video, and let a friend know if they love the Tigers. We got you here every single day for Locked on LSU. It's your team every day.